With the help of Hashem, we are learning Rosh Hashana Daf Yud. We began a Braisa yesterday. This is so important, this sugya. When the Mishnah says that Echad B'Tishrei is Rosh Hashana Lanatiyah for planting saplings, so we quoted the Braisa that tells us that if someone planted, with the details, whether you're planting, whether you are bending, whether you are grafting, if you did it 30 days before the Shemitah year, meaning 30 days before Rosh Hashana of the 7th year, the Braisa says, then when the 7th year begins, when Rosh Hashana begins, you can say that this planting already entered its 2nd year concerning the count of Orla. For the first 3 years, if the tree gives fruit, we may not even have benefit from it. The fruit is called Orla. So the Braisa is clearly explaining that the application of the Echad B'Tishrei being Rosh Hashana La'arla is that it's not that when you planted, count a full year from when you planted it to say, now the plant went into the 2nd year. Echad B'Tishrei begins the 2nd year. If it was planted, that's the words of the Braisa. If it was grafted, if it was layered 30 days before the Shemitah, then the Braisa, which is speaking about the dinam of Shemitah, also tells us that if you did that act of planting within 30 days of Rosh Hashana, then you have to actually uproot that plant, that tree. Now, when we learned the sugya yesterday, when we began the sugya, we said that there is another issue that's not verbalized in this Braisa that we will learn about today. How long does it take from when you put a seed in the ground or even a little tree in the ground until when it takes root, until when it takes hold? And that's extremely important. And we will see today, it's a machlokes tanoim. We're beginning with the premise that the Braisa that we just quoted holds that it takes 30 days for a plant to take root. And it's important to know, this will be the maskana, the havamina, the maskana, there's no in between, that when we're speaking about it has to be here first for 30 days, and only then can you say that Echad B'Tishrei is the Rosh Hashana for the 2nd year of Orla. That's only if it was here 30 days after it took root. According to that, really, you'll have to plant something 60 days before Echad B'Tishrei for you to be allowed to say that Echad B'Tishrei came. Now you entered the 2nd year, and that's the way it's going to be. We're just going to wonder, why didn't the Braisa say that? Who is the author of the Braisa? We're going to get back. That'll be a big topic of today. But remember the concept. Another detail, that when we speak about that, if you planted it within 30 days of Shemitah, you have to uproot it. There are 2 dinim here. Din number 1 is, based on this rule that it takes 30 days for something to take hold. So taka, if I planted something 30 days before Shemitah, that means it only took root during Shemitah. As if I planted it on Shemitah, then you have to uproot it because it's a plant that was planted on Shemitah. There's another thing that we learned yesterday called Tois V'Shmita. According to Tois V'Shmita, let's go that Tois V'Shmita means that Mido Oiraisa, for 30 days before Shemitah, you can't plant. That would also mean that you can only plant something 60 days before Shemitah. No, it's first 30 days for it to take root. But even if it took root before Shemitah, doesn't matter. If it took root within the month before Shemitah, oichet not good, as we'll see today. Okay. Now, bottom line will be, is that the Braisa holds that Shloishim Yoim Chashuv Shana. We will learn today a very simple thing. Don't put that picture up yet. That there is a machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Meir, one holds, like we just said, that Shloishim Yoim Chashuv Shana, and not less. That's why if you planted within 30 days of Rosh Hashana, you don't begin the 2nd year of Rosh Hashana. It wasn't 30 days. Rabbi Meir holds Yoim Echad B'Shana Chashuv Shana. That's going to be a big part of today's topic. Aside of the machlokes, how long does it take for a plant to be rooted? And ultimately, when we're going to go back to say what's the sources, whether Yoim Echad B'Shana Chashuv Shana, whether you need Shloishim Yoim B'Shana to be considered a year. Amazing. Both of them learn it from the Mabul. So we're going to use the Mabul as a source for, you don't need a full year, halachically, for you to say that it's already a year or the 2nd year. And if we'll have time, I hope we're going to learn the Tosfos that speaks about Bar Mitzvah. He just makes it clear that even if you hold that 30 days is like a year or 1 day is like a year, it's not for all of the halachas of the Torah. There are certain halachas in the Torah that a year means a year. Das balabatam a year. One example Tosfos gives is when it comes to ages. So when we say that only when you're 13 years, we paskin for a boy becomes a man, 12 years for a girl, she becomes a woman. Then they are obligated to keep the mitzvahs. Bar or bas mitzvah, there the lashon of the Chazal is 13 days in one day. Yud Gimel Shana v'yoyim echad. And people wonder, why do they say in one day? It's not really 13 years in one day. What it really means is that when it comes to bar or bas mitzvah, we don't say that 30 days, that if you're 12 years in 1 month, it's already 1 month. Not only 12 years in 1 day is a year. We don't say that. It has to be what's called me'es la'es. Me'es la'es means a full, on the clock. In that itself, we'll speak out. There's a machlokes. There's a minority opinion that holds when it comes to bar mitzvah. You know what it means, full 13 years? Me'es la'es, full 13 years. So if a boy, let's say, was born 4 p.m., even when that date begins, that on the 13th year, it's not 4 p.m. So let's say if you read the Shema, Shema Zazman Shema, but if you did a certain mitzvah before that time, you have to do it again. If you put on tefillin in the morning, you have to do it again. We don't paskin that way, and it's connected to Rosh Hashana Daf Yud Chevra and a lot more. If we'll have time today, we'll begin Chevra next year, which we learned Sunday morning. Is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Not Rabbi Lozer. Today it's Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Meir. The next year will be Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua. When did Hashem create the world? And many other events. Was it B'Tishrei? Was it B'Nisan? The sources. This is very important sugya. So let's begin. We left off Mamash on top of the Amud. And it's good. I'm happy we left off the middle of the Braisa. So we just quoted the first 2 stanzas. Daf Yud on the top. Now that the Braisa established, when it comes to the dinam of Arla, that if it was planted 30 days before Rosh Hashana, based on this rule, l'chu'ura, that's l'chu'ura, we're going to see it's not that way. That's shloishim yoyim b'shana chashav shana. When Rosh Hashana comes, it's only the 31st day since you planted it. You already entered year number 2. If you would continue doing that, then you would erroneously say, so when does the 3rd year end? When the 4th year begins. When does the 4th year begin? You would say, oichet echad b'tishrei. The Braisa says, no, zoislei. When? We're going to learn Gemara Rashi. In the cases where the 1st year was a very abbreviated year, right? It was only 30 days. If the 1st year was a very short year, then, according to Rashi, you can only say that this tree left Arla by Echad B'Shvat or we paskin Tu B'Shvat. That's the top line. Uperes Netiya Zu. Let me say what Rashi says. If you planted the tree, my friends, let's go within 30 days of Rosh Hashana, less than 30 days of Rosh Hashana. Really, it took root. Let's go less than 30 days. Then the first Rosh Hashana doesn't count for anything. You don't say it entered year number 2. When does it enter year number 2? Next Rosh Hashana. It's already really more than a year old. Take off the picture. The picture is confused. Then, according to Rashi, you know when Arla finishes? Rosh Hashana Echad B'Tishrei. Which if the 1st year is a full year, then it's normal cheshboinus. It's really more than a year because we just discounted the first couple of weeks. Talking about just Arla. If the 1st year is a proper year, according to Rashi, then Arla ends Echad B'Tishrei. But in the case of the Braisa, where it was only planted 30 days before Rosh Hashana is the 31st day, and we're saying that 30 days is like a year. It's a big chiddush. If the beginning is very little, then we don't allow it to end so quick. Then you have to go until Tu B'Shvat. Rashi says, it says in the Mishnah, Echad B'Tishrei, Rosh Hashana L'Natiyah. It's Rosh Hashana. So Rashi says, that was the saplings question. Who asked yesterday? Saplings means a young tree. Once a tree is 3 years old or older, it's called an Elon. And what comes from it is called Peiroi Se'ilan, the fruits of a tree. For the fruits of the tree, the Rosh Hashana is going to be Tu B'Shvat. It's no longer an Atiyah. Beautiful. That's the way it doesn't contradict itself. Now, according to Rashi, what's not clear is that when do we say you have to wait until Tu B'Shvat? When do we say Echad B'Tishrei? So the cases that I gave were very clear, right? If you planted it, let's say 2 weeks before Rosh Hashana, so it's a year plus 2 weeks. Then for sure it ends Rosh Hashana, Echad B'Tishrei. But what happens if you planted it, let's say Nisan? So it's already 6 months. Like, what happens if you plant it in between Rosh Hashana and Tu B'Shvat? There's a big discussion amongst the Rishonim that side with Rashi and the Achrayim. Exactly when do you say that you finish the early years on Echad B'Tishrei? When do you say that it only finishes Tu B'Shvat? Our case is the most extreme case. That when you only had a 30-day year, if it's only 30 days the first year, then the last year you can't say ended by the Echad B'Tishrei. Then at least the last year is a little bit longer.
It sounds like 30 or 31 days is already enough.
The 31 days, we don't say that. That for sure we don't say. No, 31 days also. Yeah. 31 days. Question will be if you planted it after Tu B'Shvat, that's for sure. If you plant it after Tu B'Shvat, even though it becomes a year Echad B'Tishrei, you have to wait until Tu B'Shvat. If you planted it before Tishrei, like in our case, less than 30 days, then it ends Echad B'Tishrei. The big question is in between Tishrei and Tu B'Shvat. Let's go back. Okay. So pay and the tiyazu asurum atesvav b'shvat. Whether it is the dinam of Arla, you only finish counting the Arla years, Tu B'Shvat. Fruits that grow, you can say on the 4th year. No, it's Arla. And in Eretz Yisrael, that even after you finish with the years of Arla, there is yet one more year, the next year, which is called the 4th year, in which all of the fruits that grow could be eaten, but they can only be eaten in Yerushalayim and HaKodesh, or exchanged for money, and the money has to be taken to Yerushalayim and bought and used for food. Same thing, that when does Neta Revoy end? Not Echad B'Tishrei, Tu B'Shvat. Okay. Now the Gemara wants to know, and all of this clarified the meaning of our Mishnah that says that Echad B'Tishrei is Rosh Hashana L'Natiyah. You truncate, you abbreviate the first year. How much time do you need? The Brayse says 30 days. Now, we know immediately, first of all, where do you have such a thing? How do you know that Arla and Neta Revoy, they extend into the next year? We need a source for that. It's a big doichik, even though we said that there's Netiyah and there's an Elon. At the end of the day, you planted the tree, you're saying Echad B'Tishrei is Rosh Hashana L'Natiyah, and you're telling me no, that the 3rd year doesn't end on Rosh Hashana, at least according to Rashi, sometimes. So Amar Rabbi Barab Amar Rabbi Yechanan, or Umatuba, and how did they get it? They got it in the name of Rabbi Yanai, that in Parshas Kedoshim, when the Pasuk is speaking about the laws of Arla and Neta Revoy, the pasuk speaks about the first 3 years. The fruits are Arla. Then when the pasuk speaks about the 4th year, the first word is Avav, first letter. The Torah could have written Bashana Haraviz. It says Yia Kol Pilya Kodesh Inulam Hashem. Doesn't say Bashana. It says U Bashana. Then when it comes to the 5th year, the Torah says U Bashana Chamishis Toichel Waspiriyoi. And since we could have written this without the Vav, you know what the Vav is telling you? U means in the 4th year, not only in the 4th year. No, it's Arla on 3 years and sometimes in the 4th year. No, it's Ubashana Haraviz goes to the pasuk prior. It's a drasha. Ubashana Chamishis, the Vav connect goes to the pasuk prior. Because whatever it said about regarding Bashana Haraviz that you have to take it to Yerushalayim, it's not only the 4th year, it's on the 4th year. Ubashana Chamishis, sometimes, according to Rashi, sometimes. Again, if you planted a tree, clear, Erev Rosh Hashana, you know when Arla ends? Echad B'Tishrei, 3 years later. You know when Neta Revoy ends? 3 years later, Echad B'Tishrei. But in the case where you are allowing for a small beginning to be considered a full year, Shloishim Yoim Chashuv Shana, then it doesn't end Echad B'Tishrei. Then it goes into the not the whole 4th year, up until Tu B'Shvat. In other words, Pa'amim shebereviz va'adayin asura mishum arla, u'pa'amim shebechamishis va'adayin asura mishum revoy. Okay. Being that the Mishnah never spoke about taking root, we already said the whole daf by heart. There's a machlokes tanoim, Rabbi Elazar, the Tana, Rabbi Meir, shloishim yoim b'shana chashav shana, or even yoim echad b'shana chashav shana. Either 30 days sometimes is tantamount to a year, or even only 1 day is tantamount to a year. The Brayse mentioned 30 days. The Brayse didn't mention 1 day. Shouldn't it be, according to Rav Meir, that if you even planted it 1 day before Rosh Hashana, based on the rule that sometimes 1 day is a year, even then, Echad B'Tishrei should begin the 2nd year. So, l'chayra, our Brayse, leimid like Rav Meir. Because the Eid of Meir, Ha'amar of Meir holds that Yoim Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana. Where do we find this machlokes? In the portion of Karbonei sacrifices. It's amazing how Hashem specifies many times whether the animal has to be male or female. Hashem specifies the age of the animal. Now, sometimes the Torah writes, Egel, let's say Ben Shana. Egel, a calf, means by default Ben Shana, just to know. Whenever the Torah says Ben Bakar, it means in the second year. Whenever the Torah says a par, whether male or female, it's the third year. Many times the Torah says that, the year, but sometimes the Torah says tam. So says the Braisa that whenever God speaks about a par that has to be brought as a korban, even if the Torah doesn't say of what age, you know what a par means? A par means an animal that's already halachically 3 years old. But how do we count the years? Not the way we count it by human beings, like we mentioned in the intro. When you're 9 years old, when you're bar mitzvah, and all of these other ages, when you're 20 years old, by a human being, it goes from your birthday, by the par says, let's go to Tanach Rabbi Meir. You know what 3 years old mean? There's no Rosh Hashana. 3 years old mean whenever the animal was born, 2 full years, and according to Rav Meir, and 1 day. Because we say here and in other places, not in all places, but in other places, that Yoim Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana. So if it's 24 months and 1 day, it's already 3 years old. That Par Ha'ama B'Torah Stam, which means by default 3 years old, according to everyone. How do you count 3 years? Ben Esrim Ba'arba Chodesh, 24 months, that's 2 years, clear. And only V'Yoim Echad. Once the first day ended of the third year, it's called 3 years old.
Contingent on the dates, like on before.
Here goes on the birthday. Whenever the animal came into the world, add 2 full years, and then only 1 day. That's the source from where we see that sometimes the Rabbi Meir holds Yoim Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana. Rabbi Elazar, the Tana, says no. He also agrees. Par means 3 years. He also agrees that you don't need mamish a full 3 years. Aber, meaning, however, Ben Esrim Arba Chodesh V'Lamed Yoim. By the way, it doesn't say V'Chodesh. It's very important because by us, a month sometimes will only have 29 days, and it's never 29 days. It's 30 days. 24 months and 30 days. Shahoy Rav Meir Oimer. That's the Braisa speaking. Rav Meir continuously says they are alive and living and speaking through us. Now, I want you to know that in almost all times, perhaps in all times other than one time, it says Egel ben Shana. Ben Bakar means a different age. That Egel, the Torah always says Ben Shana other than one. So when it says that Kol Makim Shenemar Egel B'Torah Stam, it's referring to one time. It's by the Egla Rufa. But anyways, if the Torah doesn't say the age, Egel means 1 year. Ben Shana. Whenever the Torah says the words Ben Bakar, or like Shlomo pointed out, it says Egel Ben Bakar. It means it can be 1 or 2 years old. That's the pshat. Egel Ben Bakar. Adar ahead, adar ahin. Ben Bakar means Ben Shtayim. Whenever the Torah says Par means Ben Shalosh. The only question is, and both Tanoim agree, it doesn't have to be full years. Question is, Yoim Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana or Shloishim Yoim Bashana Chashuv Shana. Okay, so again, coming back to the dinam of Arla, forget about Shemitah. That the Braisa says, it has to be planted 30 days before. According to Rav Meir, even if it would have been planted 1 full day before, 1 full day. Now, other people say that according to Rav Meir, we'll see that on Amud Beis, Rav Meir not only holds 1 day as a year, you don't even need a full day. We'll get to that soon. But however you count in 1 day, 1 day would have been enough. According to Rav Meir, if you plant the sapling and it's here 1 day, Echad B'Tishrei, it's already in the second year. Okay, let's learn I want to read a few lines in the Tosfos because it's so important. Look inside the Tosfos, Ben Chav Daled Chodesh Yom Echad. We're going to start 3 lines under the Gemara. The Tosfos that becomes wide, 3 lines under the Gemara. Says Tosfos that even though we have a machlokes, but they both agree that you don't need a full year. Says Tosfos, V'loi l'chol mili amrinan. We don't say regarding all the laws in the Torah that Yoim Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana, that 1 day is tantamount to a year. The yesh devarim The afilu me'es le'es, you even need me'es le'es. Me'es le'es means not merely a full year, a full year. Many understand in this Tosfos, you know what me'es le'es means? Me'es le'es means 24 hours. It means it has to be a full year, even in hours. And the rules of Bentesh Shana V'Yom Echad. There are certain halachas that begin by a boy when he's 9 years and not older. If a boy has a relation, does the act of a cohabitation before he's 9 years old and 1 day, halachically, it's not considered an act of cohabitation. So what shot 9 days? Don't say he's 8 years old in 1 day, or Rabbi Lozav, 8 years and 30 days. No, that's why the Chazal said 9 years and 1 day. It doesn't have to be 1 day. The Yom Echad is to emphasize it's not an abbreviated year. What does it have to be? The words me'es la'es, or ben yud gimel shana v'yom echad, by a boy for bar mitzvah, or bas yud bei shana v'yom echad for a girl for bas mitzvah. Okay, now why v'yom echad? Look at Tosfos says the oisa yom echad. The reason why we're adding a day is kedei lahashlim me'es la'es. Mamash mashma from Tosfos. Why does he say 1 day? Because you have to go into the day, because it has to go to the hours. That's what it's mashma. I want you to know that there's a she'iltis. The she'iltis is from the earlier Go'ainim. There are certain statements that they made that was incorporated in the Gemara. They're like quasi amayroim. And many hold that if we would have had access to the she'iltis during the earlier generations, we would have paskin that it's taka to the hour regarding bar mitzvah. But we didn't have the she'iltis. The shach, whom we follow, has a whole drasha that Tosfos doesn't mean what we just said it means. And and we paskin like the shach. The shach paskins that for bar mitzvah, you don't have to go until the hour, but you have to enter the new day. You have to enter the new day. So I'll give you an example. What happens if someone's bar mitzvah is on Shabbos? It falls out on Shabbos, whatever the date is, like this Shabbos Kodesh is Yud. Let's say someone's bar mitzvah is Yud Mar Cheshvan. What happens if you're Makabel Shabbos early? Give me an example. And we are allowed to be taking Shabbos early, any times after Plaga Mincha. We paskin that even though when you were Makabel Shabbos, it's Midoiraisa Shabbos, but the Bar Mitzvah boy is not mechuyev to keep Shabbos yet. Even though his Bar Mitzvah is on Shabbos, because it's not Yud Gimel Shana V'Yom Echad, he didn't enter he didn't enter the new day, which is only after it gets dark. And therefore, for example, if you make Kiddush when it's still light, which you are allowed to do lechatchila when you're Makabel Shabbos early, because you daven mincha before Plaga Mincha at least began, but this boy will have to make Kiddush again. Because he made Kiddush when he was not obligated midoraisa, now he became a mechuyev in mitzvahs. That according to everyone. According to some, if he was born 8 p.m., he made Kiddush 7 p.m. When it's dark, he has to make Kiddush again. We don't pass on that way. We follow the shach, even though it's mashma from this Tosfos like the she'iltis. Let's leave it at that. This is the Rosh Hashana daf yud. Okay. Says the Gemara, no, our Braisa, don't tell me that the Braisa cannot go like Rab Meir. From here until the Amid Beis, you know what we're gonna prove? That this Braisa is only Rab Meir. How great is that? Not Rab Elazar. Let's begin. Afilu teima Rab Meir. Ki k'amar Rab Meir yoim echad b'shana chashuv shana. Look at this logic. Take only b'seif shana. What's the seif shana? Torah says, bring for me a par, a bull. Okay, and we know a bull means 3 years. So what does Rav Meir say? The animal was born 24 months plus 1 day. The 1 day is the 3rd year. Because we're counting 1 day for a whole year at the end of the count. What's the case of the Braisa? You planted something before Echad. You want for 1 day to count as a full year for the first year. That you can't do, even according to Rav Meir. Now, what will be the logic? Let me tell you something. Before we go into the logic, the Gemara is going to bring a phenomenal proof that we say the opposite. We do differentiate between the beginning and the end, but it's mamash the opposite, and it works. Says the Gemara, no. Amar Rava of a lav kal v'chomer, I have a kal v'chomer, that since we see that Rabbi Meir says that 1 day is like a full year at the end of the count, for sure he should say that 1 day is a year in the beginning of the count. Where do we find that the beginning is easier? It's easier for you to begin with an abbreviated time. Where do we see that? From the laws of Nida. Now, the laws of Nida that the Gemara is referring to are not the laws that we practice today. We are bound today Like Omar Abzeira, Benois Yisrael Hichmiru al Atzman, right? Shafilu Royois Tipas Dam Kechardel. They Yesheva Soleh Shivas Nekiyim, very important. Without translating it, what we're saying right now is not relevant at all, but Midin Torah. If a woman is in her Nida days, when she sees blood, she doesn't need to have any waiting of clean days. There's no clean days, but she has to count 7 days, including the day she sees dam. As long as the flow stops a little bit before Shkia, she makes what we call a hefsek tada, and she goes to the mikveh that night.
Even on the 7th day?
She goes to the mikveh. Now, the only time that you go to the mikveh at night, we spoke about this many times, normally almost all of the times that a yid goes to the mikveh was during the day. Midin Torah, if a woman needs shivas nekiyim, which is what she does now, when she would go to the mikveh, always during the day. But by a nida, where you don't need any nekiyim, you go to the mikveh at night. Now, let me ask you a question. Today is Friday, right? What happens if a woman is going to see dam today, 5 p.m. in LA? Does Friday count as day number 1? Yes. It's not a full day. Doesn't matter. She saw blood on Friday. If Friday is day number 1, that's a leniency. We're saying that even if the dam finishes Thursday before Shkia, she can go to the mikveh Thursday night. We don't need a full day. Even if she saw dam 1 minute before Shkia on Friday, the beginning, that's a full day. But let me ask you, at the end of the day, on Thursday, a woman can only go to the mikveh at night. The last day has to end. We never abbreviate the last day. So we see that when it comes to the end of a count, in the area of a nida, we are more makpid. It has to be full. And even by nida, in the beginning, it can be short. So Rava says, if Rav Meir holds by the pod, that the end, 24 months and 1 day, if you can abbreviate the end, then avada, you can abbreviate the beginning. Gavaldik. Let's read it inside. Which means when it comes to the last day, on the 7th day, a woman cannot say, I'm not bleeding on Thursday. I already wasn't bleeding on Wednesday. So why do I have to wait until tonight? I'm not bleeding. Let me go now. I'm already in the 7th day. I'm not going to go to the mikveh. I'm not going to go to the mikveh Wednesday night. Let me have a little bit of the 7th day good. And it's already 7 days. No, the 7th day has to be, the end has to be full. Yet, the second to last line. Soif hayoim, the end of the first day. Like we said, you need to count 7 days. Now, let's say if a woman then would only, she would menstruate, I don't know, for 5 days. But Anida you have to have the 7 days. Not what we're saying now has nothing to do with the way we practice it. But you need from the beginning of the menstruation until the mikvah that week. So a woman in the beginning could count a machaya because she doesn't need the whole 7 days. She only needed really, the Torah says 7 days. Good. So if she starts bleeding Friday a minute before Shkia, at least Friday is day number 1. So you abbreviate the beginning and you don't abbreviate the end. So let's come back over here. Shana year. Rav Meir clearly says, Sheyoim echad oil l'geseifa. The Torah says par. Par means 3 years old. Comes Rav Meir and he says, 3 years old means 2 years. And for the end, for the 3rd year, 1 day is enough. Daf Yud Amid Beis. So Einoi Din, that according to Rav Meir, when it comes to the dinim of Orla, Sheyoim echad oila betchilasa, will he not hold that even if something was planted 1 day before Rosh Hashana, it's 1 day. Rosh Hashana should begin year number 2.
Good question. Isn't Nida 8 days if you count from Shabbos to Shabbos? So maybe that's why we're saying Shabbos is the first day, Shabbos is the 8th day.
No. She can only go to the mikvah on the next day. Correct. A woman goes to the mikvah after the Shivas Nakim, which is the 8th day.
She's essentially going to the night, which is the 9th day.
No, the 8th day. Even today, when the Shivas Nakim, that's why it works on the same night. If a woman makes a hefsek tada any night of the week, like if she makes a hefsek tada, let's say Friday night, mikvah night will be Friday night because hefsek tada is done before Shkia. That's the 7th, and the next one is the 8th. It's a nice concept that to begin something, kolas cholas kashas. Many people get stuck. They just don't know how to begin, and no one knows how to begin. Just do anything. But there's a big power in the beginning. That's why the Gemara is saying that logic, to end, you build a project. To finish the project is gefrelach. With all the details, it's almost never done. Let's do this, let's do that. And until you finish it, but when you begin it, there's such a power in beginning. And Taka, according to Rav Meir, one day should be Rosh Hashana. Now we got a problem. The problem is that if that's the case, so you're telling me the Bryce is not Rav Meir. So who is the Bryce like? Oh, Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says 30 days. We got a problem. They're taking root. We're going with the premise that we're going to stay, that even though there is a machloikas of other Tanoim, how long does it take for a plant to halachically take root? No one is arguing the reality. The question is, what part of the reality is called, now it took root? In Lashon HaKodesh, taking root is called, it was koilet. It means it was accepted in the ground. So we're going to go and we're going to state that the Braisa follows those who hold it takes 30 days for it to take root. So the Braisa, even if it's going to go according to Rabbi Lazar, shouldn't have said that if you plant something 30 days or more before Echad B'Tishrei, then also Loishana. The Braisa should have said 60 days because you need 30 days for it to take root, and then you need to have the Shloishim Yamashana Chashiv Shana. So we're going to have a problem. The Braisa goes according to Noah. The last line and the top line. What the Elah, you're telling me that the author therefore is Rabbi Lazar? I should need really 30 and 30 the Tanan. Oh, now this is Mishnayos and Shavitz. Ein noitin ve'ein mavrichin ve'ein markivin. Again, this planting, putting a seed or a little tree into the ground. Mavrich, hamavrich es hagafanim, is when you bend a branch. People did it regularly. We have our winemaker Shira into the ground. And by the way, there's a big toisvus. I just want to say this now. I didn't say this yesterday. You know, there's Mishnayos Arlo. You know what it says in Mishnayos Arlo? That when you're only mavrich or only markiv, you don't have to worry about Arlo. It's mamash astira. Mamish. No, it's here we're speaking, we're putting it all together. There's a Mishnah that says clearly that Arlo only has to be, knows if you have a vine, the vine was planted 10 years ago. If you bend and put one edge into the ground, you don't have to count it. There's no Arlo. So the resolution is, did you cut it off? Did you not cut it off? If you didn't cut it off, that's what the Mishnah says. You don't have to count. If from when you gave it a snip, then we view this as a new planting, and you go from when you planted it, and all these things have to be worked out. But that's not the gear for right now. Anyways, so it says in the Mishnah, Erev Shvius, Pachus Milamed Yom Lifnei Rosh Hashana. You may not do it less than 30 days before Rosh Hashana. You know why? Because since it takes 30 days for something to take root, if I planted something less than 30 days before the Shemitah year, you know what? You know when I really planted it? 30 days after I put it into the ground. If 30 days is in the 7th year, I planted it on Shemitah. Then Yaakov, there's a penalty that if you did it, you have to uproot it. Divrei, now many people are not goyed as Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. I want you to know that because it's a das rabbin, even though we don't paskin this way. It's amazing. But the general consensus is 30 days, which is why our Gemara is going to say that the Braisa we learned yesterday that we began with today will go with the Shita, you need 30 days. So it should have been 30 and 30. That's the kash. But there are other two opinions. Number one is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol harkava, she'enoi kaletas begimel yomim shuv enoi kaletas. Even by grafting. Grafting takes the most time. You know how much time it takes? Max 3 days. When he says harkava, guys, it means even. Rabbi Yehuda holds that halachically 3 days is the most you need. So as far as this detail of, I don't want to plant it on Shemitah, so it's not about when I put it on the ground, but if I put it on the ground, Chavtes Elul, halachically, it's only going to take root, base Tishrei. I can't plant on the Shemitah year, 3 days, not 30 days. And the third opinion, and we paskin like the third opinion, but it's not going to be the one we're going to be using today. The third opinion is from Rabbi Yossi and Rab Shimon, and they hold Shtei Shabbos. And by the way, going back to what we learned in the Mishnah, I think we learned Rashi in the Mishnah, when Rashi says Linatia betoich in Menachamov, that's the betoich Menachamov, because we take a paskin that Shloishim Yom Hashana Chashav Shana for the din of Arla. We paskin that it takes 2 weeks for something to take root. So when it comes today, Bapoil, when it comes to the counting of Arla, when can you say that even though it wasn't there for a full year, we are already in the 2nd year, if you planted it in middle of Tez Vav, because Tu B'Av is 15 days, which means that I have 2 weeks for it to take root. Then I have 30 days Rosh Hashana, and then Echad B'Tishrei will be Rosh Hashana. Okay, these are the three shittas. Now, before we finalize the question, he's adding another detail. And his other detail isn't only regarding not being allowed to plant on Shemitah. Just to know, there's another detail. Rashi says there's another thing we learned yesterday. Tosfos Shemitah. Not only can you not plant on Shemitah, you cannot even plant within 30 days of Shemitah because of Tois. Forget about Arla. Another detail. They go together. So I'm asking you a question. If I'm not allowed to plant 30, everyone holds to the 30 days, but it only takes, let's say, 3 days to take root. So that means, according to the Tanach, you may never plant 60 days because closer than 60 days before Shemitah, because it takes 30 days to take root. Forget about Arla. Same concept. You can't plant 30 days before. Planting means when it takes root. It takes 30 days. So either 30 and 30, or 30 and 3, or 30 and 2 weeks. Aside of Arla. That's what he's adding. He's saying that L'divrei ha'omer lamid, you always need 30 and 30. For you not to violate planting in Tosfos Shemitah, you have to plant something in a way where you have 30 days for it to take root, and you have to make sure that it took root before 30 days. L'divrei ha'omer shloisha, which is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, then sarach shloisha u'shloishim. L'divrei ha'omer beis shabbosos, sarach beis shabbosos u'shloishim yom. So what's our problem? What is the shortest time that we have in the Tanoim that something takes root? 3 days. So the Braisa should have said 30 days and 3 days. 30 days and 3 days. How can the Braisa say that if you planted it 30 days before, you don't have to uproot it? You have to uproot it. Forget about the dinner because it's Shemitah. So even if the Braisa is the most lenient opinion in our context that it takes root the quickest, which is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda Sfiralei, then Gimel Ushloishim Boya. So I agree with you that our Braisa cannot be, that's how we began, can't be Rav Meir. Because according to Rav Meir, Yom Echad Bashana Chosh Shana, for sure in the beginning. But what about this whole din of taking root? Now again, we're going with the premise. So even if it only takes root 3 days, you got a problem. If it would be Rabbi Elazar, 30 days, let Rabbi Elazar to be Chosh Shana for Arla. And even if Rabbi Elazar would agree with Rabbi Yehuda, it should have been 30 days and 3 days. So who's the author of the Braisa? So we began today by saying, it can't be Rav Meir. We're going to conclude it must be Rav Meir. Ela Punkt Faker, the Braisa is authored by Rav Meir. Guys, everything fits. Why did the Braisa says you need to have planted a tree 30 days before? Why did you need 30 days? Do you know why you need 30 days? Because the Rav Meir holds, like the Tanach here, that it needs 30 days for it to take root. Once it took root, what else does Rav Meir hold? Yom Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana. You know what Rav Meir holds? That the Yom Echad doesn't even have to be 24 hours. Means when I plant something, and Chazal tell us the most stringent opinion, it takes 30 days for it to take root. You know what it means? When I plant, in the beginning of the 30th day, it took root. In the beginning of the 30th day. Now you have the remaining of the day. So there is still 1 day, not even a full day. Dafke because Rav Meir holds Yom Echad Bashana Chashuv Shana, does he hold that if you plant something only 30 days before, Echad B'Tishrei is year number 2 for Arla. Beautiful. Only Rav Meir. The Braisa that says you need 30 days. You know why you need 30 days? Not like we learned until today, because if you don't have minimum 30 days, and it's not Chashuv Shana. No, the din of 30 days in the Braisa is about taking root. That's called Liklita. Rav Meir also needs Yom Echad Hashana. So at least the Braisa should have said, Iachi Lamed Aleph, boy, it should have been 31 days. So the Gemara says, no, Kosaba, Rav Meir holds that Yom Lamed Oilo Lekan, Oilo Lekan. And it's Gavaldik, like I said, because the tree takes root 30 days. 30 days doesn't mean if I planted at 20 to 7 a.m., I have to wait until 20 to 7. On the 30th day in the beginning, halachically, it's called the took root. And now you have until the end of the day. Until the end of the day might not be a full day. Doesn't matter. You don't even need a full day.
What about Shemitah?
What about Shemitah? Shemitah against Echad B'Tishrei. What about Shemitah? No, 100%. So Tosfos Shemitah means that you cannot plant it 30 days. That's why you net the 30 days. Perfect. If you plant it within 30 days, one second. What about 1 second? What about, so it takes root in a little bit. It takes root in 30 days. Takes root in 30 days. 1 second. And place for Shemitah is 30 days. It's 30 days. So, okay, that's what the Rishonim speak up. That's what we learned yesterday. We said right away, it's really 30 days and 30 days for place for Shemitah.
So for me, it's going to be 61 days.
No. If you're correct. You said good, Shleim. Now we paskin that it takes root 2 weeks, just the way we paskin. So we also hold for Tois V'Shmita that all you need to do is you need to plant it from the 15th. On the 15th of Av is the last time you can plant. Because it takes 2 weeks to take root, and you have now the 30 days of Tois V'Shmita. Okay.
So what's the thing? It takes 1 day to take root? No.
No one holds 1 day to take root. It's 3 days, 2 weeks, or 30 days. And we are going with the premise that our brisa that we began yesterday with is following the Tanach here, takes 30 days. When it comes to the din of Arla, we're focusing on the din of Arla. The din of Arla demands 30 days before. Why 30 days? 30 days to be koilet. Yom echad b'shana chashuv shana. So not Shemitah. You know what, Shlemi, the din of our Mishnah, forget about Shemitah for a second. According to Rav Meir, if you plan something 30 days before Rosh Hashana, echad b'tishrei, it's already the second year. What's the magic? 30 days to be koilet, but the 30th day is Erev Rosh Hashana, in the beginning of Erev Rosh Hashana, and then you have the rest of the day counts for the Yom Echad Hashana Chashuv Shana for you to say that Echad B'Tishrei Yavalik. That's how it goes. Now, Omar Rabbi Yechanan, I want you to know this machloikas that we began with. Is 1 day enough to be tantamount to a year, Rabbi Meir? Or that's the parech, that's the par? Or no, you need to have 30 days. Rabbi Lazar. Both of them learned it from the Mabul. It's amazing. We're going to have the Mabul today, and a mamish in 1 daf from now, we're going to have the Mabul again. And for another con, we're going to speak a lot about the Great Flood. Then we're going to learn about the constellations. So it's going to be Levitic. We're going to learn about Mazoles. Wow. Okay, let's go over here. So Amar Rabbi Yechanan v'Shneim, both Rabbi Meir and the Tana Rabbi Lazar, Mikra Echad Darshu, they expound the same verse. Now, the pasuk in reference to the Great Flood gives Noach's age as a point of reference. If you remember Chitas, in other words, when Noach was 600 years old, that's when the Mabul began. And sometimes throughout the different phases of the Mabul, we speak about now how old is Noach. Now, normally, if someone is 600, Sheish Meyers. When someone is 601, Sheish Meyers Va'achas. For some reason, the Torah uses the number 1 before the Sheish Meyers, and that's very significant. So it says, Vayihi Ba'achas V'Sheish Meyers Shanam. In 1 and 600 years, this means to the life of Noach. Barishoin, guys, means in the first month. When is the first month? We will see this first month, Machloikes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Whether this first month, if the flood began in Mar Cheshvan, then this first month is the month of Nisan. If the flood began in Iyar, Kishitas Rabbi Yeshua, when it says in the Torah that it was on the 17th day of Iyar, then this is in Tishrei. Okay, we're going to go right now. It's not even a Geyam. Let's go to Tznisan. But Rishon, in the first month, when Be'echad L'Chodesh, and the Torah writes, that's when the waters began to dry up. There was a evolution. There was a progression in the world becoming ready for Noach to leave. So hold on. You are only in the first month. You are only on the first day of the month. And Noach's age is already another year. This is a loaded statement. It's a drasha because really, as we learned to Tosfos, when it comes to our years, it goes by when were you born? Yud Gimel Shana V'Yom Echad. We know that, but for the sake of the drasha, we want to point out that Rav Meir holds me the Akata Yom Echad hu the Ayel Bashanam. The Torah says in the first month, in the first day of the month, and we are counting the other year, not 600 when the flood began, but 601. The Kakari Leishana, And v'idach, what about the Rabbi Elazar? So he says, here's a chaim, iksiv b'sheish meyos v'achashana, which is normally the Torah. The Torah normally writes sheish meyos, right? Sheish meyos v'achas, sheish meyos v'shtayim. If the little digit would have been after the bigger digit, then you would have been right. I would be open to listening to this drasha. Guys, it's still a drasha. It's not the pshat. Yechapar, I just said shleima, because really Noach's age has nothing to do with the first month.
How long was the mabul?
We're going to learn soon. The mabul was a full solar year. If we go like the mabul began in Mar Cheshvan, Yud Zayim Mar Cheshvan, and then when it ended when he left, it was Chav Zayim Mar Cheshvan the next year. Oh, but anyways, for the sake of the drasha, if it would have said 601, I would have agreed to you. But now that the Torah wrote the age of Noach in an unusual way by writing the little digit before the big digit, right? In 1 and 600 years, you're not reading it correctly, says Rabbi Elazar. The word shana, you know what the word shana goes on? Only on the words before, mamish like we learned yesterday. Mikra nidrash lefanav, v'loy lifnei fanav. So it's as if it says sheish meya shana. It was still 600 years. The word shana, sheish meya only goes on 600. 1 second. The pasuk begins saying vayihi ba'achas. No, ba'achas is something else. The word achas means we began. It's not a full year. It's not the year 600 and yon. It's in the beginning of this new year. Fakir, the Torah wrote achas before 600, not number 1 after 600. To be medayik, it's not considered a full year because it's only 1 day. Aschalto da achas ka'am. However, v'Rabbi Elazar, my Talmud chsiv b'rishoin be'echad bechodesh. How does Rabbi Eliezer know 30? Okay, I got it. Rabbi Eliezer is medayik from the flipping of 1 to before 600 to the one after that. Don't be medayikli. But how does he get 30 days? So it says barishon be'echad bechodesh, right? The first day of the first month. The first day of the first month. Now I know that 30 days. That 1 day is not a year, but 1 day is a full month. 1 day is considered already a month. Since it's only in the first day that only entered the month. It's the first day of the month. And the Torah calls it chodesh. Let me tell you what this means. To appreciate these drushim. The Torah did not have to say the words be'echad l'chodesh. The Torah could have said be'echad. Even without writing the words la chodesh, it would have made perfect sense. So la chodesh is extra. So what the Torah is really trying to say is that even though it's only the first day of the month, it's considered the month. Rabbi Elazar learns from here that 1 day of a month is a month. Then he says logically, if 1 day of a month is a month, 30 days of a year is a year, not less. We had this a few daf ago. The months are built by units of days. So if 1 unit that's used to build a month is tantamount halachically to a full month, then the same logic should go to years. But years are built from months. 1 unit is 1 month. Let's read it inside. So Shema Mino, the extra words be'echad la chodesh, that's the key. The word la chodesh is extra. From there we learn yamecha b'chodesh chashuv chodesh. A single day in the month, halachically, is regarded an entire month. So now from there we extrapolate. So why? Because chodesh lebenuyav. We use 1 unit that builds a month to be tantamount to the full month. You know what? How do you count a year? We're not counting a year shlema by counting days. We're counting a year by counting months. So 1 unit of a year is a month. So ushana lebenuyav. That's Rabbi Elazar's source. That shloishim yoim chashuv shana, with all of the obvious questions we just mentioned on Amud Aleph, that he dafka doesn't say chodesh, he says shloishim yoim. Chodesh from this limit, it should have been a chodesh, even if it's chas. All of this is discussed. I want to go with something else. That Rashi, if you have time, takes out the paragraph as we have it in takes out the brackets, and now we're beginning a new sugya. And this is, at least let's open, we have time to open up. This is so important. We're going to be speaking about the big argument between the Tanoim Rabbi Eliezer, that's Rabbi Eliezer the Great, and the Tana Rabbi Yehoshua regarding many events as to when they happened. Beginning with, when did Hashem create the world? When did God Almighty create Adam Rishon? It's obviously connected to Masechtas Rosh Hashana, because when we already interpreted, when the Mishnah says Echad B'Tishrei is Lishana. Why? A lot of it has to do with, why is it Yom Hadin? Because because this is when it all began. Oh, so let's go. So the Tanya, we learned, Rabbi Eliezer Oimer B'Tishrei Nivra Ha'olam. The world was created in Tishrei. Another nuance. Even according to Rabbi Eliezer, the world was really created Chaf Hei Elul. The 6th day of creation was the 6th of Tishrei. However, the way we have to think is that when you want to give a date to some things coming into being, what's important is to know the purpose of that coming into being. The purpose of creation is man. Man meaning man and woman. That's the purpose of creation. So therefore, before they were created, we don't even count. It counts from the purpose. That's how important purpose is. So be'echad b'tishrei nivra ha'olam. Number 2, b'tishrei noldu avos. Our patriarchs were born in Tishrei, even though the Brisa writes avos. Avos does not mean Yitzchak. Dafken not Yitzchak. Everyone will hold that Yitzchak Avinu was born during the month of Nisan. But Tishrei noldu avos means Avraham and Yaakov. Not only that, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, B'Tishrei Meisu Avos, they passed away on Tishrei. Let's make a quiz. Who knows the exact yard site of Avraham Avinu? Yeah, at least we got the month here. B'Pesach Noilad Yitzchak. This is one statement that no one argues with. Second to last line, Rosh Hashana Nifkeda Sarah Rachel V'Chana. The word Nifkeda means remembering. Remembering does not mean that they conceived on Rosh Hashana. Yes, it means, and this is connected to the Yom Hadin, as we learned in Rashi, not about the past, but primarily about what will happen during the next year. When did Kaviyachal, so to say, when did God remember that Sarah is barren, that Rachel is barren, that Chana was barren, and God determined they will have a child? That was on Rosh Hashana. When did they actually conceive? That was later. But they became nifka, they were remembered on Rosh Hashana. The last line in the Amid, Rosh Hashana Yotza Yosef Mebeiso Asurim. Wow. Yosef Atzadik was taken out of the pit, was brought in front of Paroi, and just like that, he became the Mishnah Lamelech Echad B'Tishrei, Daf Yud Aleph on the top. Another statement, and this statement will be the second statement that everyone agrees with. Yitzchak was born on Nisan, everyone agrees with. As to the Rosh Hashana, Batla Avoidam Avisein of Mitzrayim. It was on Rosh Hashana, meaning on Echad B'Tishrei, that our grandparents in Egypt were no longer subservient, they were no longer obliged to do any service as a servant in Egypt. And as Tosfos writes in the top, Rosh Hashana Batla Avoidam Avisein of Mitzrayim, Rabbi Yeshua Moida Baha B'Reif Svarim. Even Rabbi Yeshua's might, at least according to most versions, the Makkos began in Nisan. The Mishpat HaMitzrayim was for 12 months, as we learned in Masechtas Eiduyois. After that point, we were free. Like we mentioned a few days ago, that Shitas Rabbi Yishmael B'noi Shel Rabbi Yechon Membroika, that Avadim, they don't go free just like that. First, they have this period from Rosh Hashana until Yom Kippur. They don't have to do any work. And they get to live off for free the state of their original owners. And then they go free. The Nisan Nigalu, even though everyone agrees that in Nisan we were taken out of Egypt, but when it comes to the coming of Mashiach, B'Tishrei Asidim Ligoel. However, let's go weiter. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, B'Nisan Nivra Ha'olam. The world, Adam and Chava, were created on Echad B'Nisan. The world was actually created on Chafei Adam. B'Nisan Noildu Avos. All of them. All of them. B'Nisan Meisu Avos. The Pesach Noilad Yitzchak. You see, we're going from Nisan to the Pesach. Now we're specifying, or at least we're not saying on what day on Pesach, but on Pesach. But Rosh Hashana, he agrees. Nifkata Sarah Rachel V'Chana. Oh, he agrees. But Rosh Hashana, he agrees. Yotza Yosef Mebeiso Asurim. So I go back. There are many things in which they agree. But Rosh Hashana, which is Echad B'Tishrei, Batla Avoidam Avisein of Mitzrayim. But Nisan Nigalu, but Nisan Asidim Ligoel. He agrees that we left Mitzrayim on the 15th of Nisan. But what about Mashiach? Mashiach is going to come. The full redemption will happen on Nisan. Just to finish with the machlokes, when will Mashiach come? Whether it's going to be a miraculous event, whether it's going to be a progression of going into the Geula Shlema, as the Rebbe connects it to Sanhedrin, when the Gemara speaks about will he come on a donkey, which is a natural phenomenon, or whether Va'oru Emanan Shemai will come on clouds. Same machlokes between the Rambam and Rashi and Tosfos. Will we build the Beis Hamikdash? Natural. Will it come down from the heavens? Miraculous. Be'ita ba'achishana depends if Mashiach will come, because there's a date after which Mashiach has to be here. Even if we are, God forbid, not worthy, then it's going to be more natural. More natural is B'Tishrei Asidim Ligol. If it's going to be a miraculous redemption, then it's going to happen in the month of Nisan. Chavra, we just opened up this phenomenal sugya, God willing, to be continued.
Beautiful.